we're gonna probably hop right into this. For those who might, I don't know why you'd be watching this if you haven't seen the other two, but on the off chance you are. This is part 3, the final part for book 1 of the War of the Yokai series. And the last time you'll be seeing this image. When we get to book 2, I'm going to be changing the background image. What can I say? I love that I get a chance to read these books to y'all that I've spent so much time working on, and it's a lot of fun. Not feeling the best today, which is why we're not doing Minecraft. Oh, that was the original plan here, I know. Still not feeling the best, but I'm feeling good enough to read. I can read a book. I can read a book. So, that's what we're gonna do. Now, oh dear, because the chat thing is down, and I'm going to have the Notes app open on my phone, I'm not going to be able to read chat this stream. Well, this will be interesting. Hey, Kagi, welcome. Since you're here, Kagi, just if people start chatting at me in the chat, just let them know I can't read chat during this stream. But I do appreciate their messages. Anyway, please and thank you, do that for me. I guess we'll go ahead and we'll get started then. Let me just close out some of these other apps I got going. And here we go. 2 weeks had passed since the incident at the shrine, and a special ops team had been sent to investigate. What they found was horrible, to say the least. In the main chamber were the remains of several humans in various states of decomposition. One thing they shared were clear-cut bite marks all over their bodies, the wounds matching those of several various monster races. In the chambers below, they found evidence of both lavish parties and violent brawls. More than once, an agent discovered a body huddled in the corner, as though they had been hiding. Just as they were about to give up on finding any survivors, however, one of them heard a small voice crying for help. Hidden under the floorboards was a red Oni child, only about 5 years old, suffering from severe dehydration and hunger. After she was brought to base and properly fed, Lydia was sent in to talk to her. "What's your name, little one?" she asked as the girl devoured an entire steamed ham in one bite. "Asuna!" she piped between bites. "Asuna Kobayashi!" Somewhat shocked, Lydia asked if Asuna had a big sister named Ray. "Yeah-huh," answered the girl cheerfully. "Have you seen my sissy at all? I miss her so much." "Don't worry, Asuna. We'll let your sister know you're here," replied Lydia, softly patting the girl on the head. "In the meantime, can you tell me what happened to you? Why were you at that building, Asuna?" Mid-bite, Asuna stopped and looked Lydia in the eyes. "It was scary," she said. "The guy said that all humans were insects, and barely even that, and we shouldn't have to hide from them. I like humans, I do. But my friend wanted me to come with her, so I did. Then when everyone left, I was asleep, so they never found me. And when I woke up, I heard the people upstairs, so I yelled." Lydia nodded. In the back of her mind, she immediately thought of several groups with tactics like this, but none of them had been active for quite some time. It was a common enough sentiment in the monster community that they shouldn't have to hide from humans just because they're terrified of them, or that monsters are the superior race and that humans should be used as nothing more than cattle. Sometimes both. "Did you get a good look at the person who was talking, Asuna?" asked Lydia. "Or could you at least tell what kind of monster he was?" "Let's see," she mumbled as she tried to remember. "Nope, I don't think so. But he was really scary looking. Kind of like an Oni, but really, really mean. He had more horns too, like a goat's. Sounds like she's describing Satan, thought Lydia with grim amusement. Was there anything else? Inquired the concerned cat girl. A name, perhaps, or a marking of some sort? The girl paused for a moment as she racked her brain to try and remember the events of that night. Though she had done her best to repress them, they were still very much ingrained in her consciousness.
Yeah, I think you said his name was Armanbad? No, that wasn't it.
Lydia's face went completely pale. Ahrimanabad? She asked with much hesitation, a sickening knot forming in her stomach.
Yeah, that's it,
replied the Oni cheerfully, unaware of the implications her words held. It was then that Lydia, who, despite her kind and gentle exterior, was a battle-hardened master assassin, fainted from the shock of the situation. It would be another 2 days before she regained consciousness, and by that time, she had learned that the information had made its way all the way to the top of the metaphorical food chain. All the way to London, England. Get a little drink here. I love that lemonade. The next evening, after Usuko had finished cooking dinner for herself and Kuriko, a soft knocking came from the door.
I'll get it,
called the younger Takibana as she hopped off the sofa and made her way to the door. Upon opening it, she was greeted by 2 faces, one of which she recognized immediately as Rei Kobayashi. The other, however, didn't seem familiar to Kuriko, though the young pinkette did seem to remember her from somewhere.
Oh, Kobayashi-san! Nice to see you again. Who's your friend?
The orange-haired girl smiled softly, giggling a bit. My name is Nonami Issei. We met a few weeks ago? The young girl blushed in embarrassment.
I'm so sorry,
she said, letting the 2 girls into the modestly sized apartment.
The past few days have been a little chaotic around here.
A savory aroma flowed through the room as Usuko removed the lid from the pan and took it off the burner.
What you cooking good looking?
Teased Ray with a wink.
I wasn't hungry before, but now, well.
A loud, almost animalistic growling reverberated from the girl's stomach, which caused her to blush. Don't worry, said Usuko with a smile. I always cook a little extra, just in case. You 2 ever had stir-fry? Once, replied Nonami, implying that she wasn't the biggest fan of the dish.
If Usa-chan cooked it, then it, must be good,
said Ray, drooling slightly. A few moments later, all 4 girls were assembled around the kitchen table, plates filled with Usuko's special stir-fry.
Itadakimasu! It's so good,
smiled the red Oni with a mouthful of food.
I have to concur,
agreed Nonami, though only saying so to make Usuko feel better, as vampires have great difficulty tasting human food.
Thanks, guys, really, replied the pink-haired chef. I work at the restaurant across the street, so I've had to learn how to cook a few dishes here and there.
The mention of that place seemed to excite Ray, who frantically asked,
Wait, you don't mean Sakurai, do you?
Yeah, replied Usuko.
I've been there for about 7 or 8 months now.
Why?
Why, I'm so very glad you asked, Usuko Takibana,
said Ray, her eyes sparkling with pride.
It, just so happens that my very own mother founded and owns that place. Pretty cool, huh? I actually work there too. Kind of weird that we haven't met up till now.
Wait, hold up, said Usuko, wiping her mouth with a napkin. I thought Sakurai was owned by someone named Fumizaki.
Yeah, Sashoko Fumizaki.
Ray nodded vigorously, her eyes closed with a prideful grin across her face.
That's Mama, all right. Though her real name is actually Zasora. Did you know that her dad was, the guy who founded the city? Cool, huh?
Usuko was a little confused because she knew Ray's last name was Kobayashi, yet her mother's was apparently Fumizaki. Then again, maybe things work differently in the Oni world. As if she were psychic, Nonami answered Usuko's unspoken question. Oni do not typically have last names, as their first names are so unique that rarely do 2 Oni with the same name ever meet. if they ever have to interact with the human world, they'll usually just take the name of their village as their last name. That made sense to Usuko. After all, the same thing had happened at the end of the Tokugawa shogunate. That was something she actually remembered from history class. So, you're from the village of Kobayashi? Oh, wrong person.
So, you're from the village of Kobayashi?
She asked of Ray, earning a slow headshake from the girl.
No, I lived here in Fumazaki all my life. I just really, really like the name Kobayashi.
There was another knock at the door, followed by a voice saying,
It's me. Would you be there and invite me in, Usuko? Otherwise I'll be stuck out here all night.
I thought it was vampires who had to be invited in, she replied playfully. Sure, Sarah, you can come in. Didn't know that could come out. The beautiful silver-haired banshee phased through the door and floated over to the table.
You know, it's funny you say that,
she said, glancing knowingly at Nonami.
It's actually because of us that people started believing that to begin with.
Not gonna ask, sighed Usuko. Wait, then how did you get in the first time?
Simple. Entered the unit next door and phased through the wall. I've dealt with this for a long time, so I know how to get around it. Just didn't want to be a rude guest tonight.
That seemed to satisfy Usuko, who then noticed her younger sibling looking up at the spectral girl with curiosity, her Coke bottle-lensed glasses sitting on the table in front of her. Oh, groaned Usuko, only just now remembering her sister was still in the room.
Sis?
She whispered.
Is that a ghost?
Wait, you can see her, Kuroko-san? Kuroko nodded.
But barely. She's like a silvery greenish smudge in front of a bigger tannish orange smudge.
Kuroko then put her glasses back on and continued.
I can kind of see her with my glasses on, but only an outline. Kind of like she's got a cloaking field or something.
Ray nudged Nonami and whispered,
Sounds like Kuro-chan has Amasero, just like Emiko does.
Indeed, replied Nonami quietly, albeit a less advanced version.
My name's Kuroko Takibana, said the girl with a smile. What's your name, Miss Ghost?
Seta O'Malley, pleased to make your acquaintance. The banshee was quite grateful that young Kuroko didn't seem to remember the whole kidnapping thing. It would make the whole situation just that much more awkward.
And, well, I'm not so much of a ghost per se, but rather I'm what's known as a banshee. Banshee?
Reiterated Kuroko, thinking the spectral girl had misspoken, as her Japanese was rudimentary at best.
Aye, replied Sarah. We're mostly native to Ireland, and the people over there tend to think of us as an omen of death.
The bespectacled Pinkette gulped nervously, earning an amused chuckle from Nonami. No need to worry, Kuroko-san, she said in an effort to reassure the girl. While it's true that banshees are drawn to those who are close to death, it doesn't mean you're doomed now that you've seen her. Kuroko simply nodded in reply, smiling in an oddly calm manner given the situation. You're taking this whole ghosts are real thing better than I expected, Kuroko, said a surprised Usuko. Most people would have questions.
Silly sis,
she replied.
This is a dream, isn't it? After all, it has to be. I mean, what's next? Issei-san being a vampire, or Kobayashi-san and Oni?
She chuckled nervously.
Right?
After about 30 seconds of dead silence, Kuroko began to realize that she was not, in fact, dreaming, much to her quickly building dread.
Please tell me you're not really...
Nonami flashed her fangs for Kuroko and motioned to Ray. You probably don't want her to transform in here. She'd break through the ceiling. And just like that, Kuroko Takibana fainted. Time for some more sip. In an underground complex, roughly 20 miles off the eastern coast of Japan, the cruel-looking girl gave an impressed whistle as she casually waltzed down the scaffold-laced corridor. Ancient stone corridor, rather. Everywhere she looked, people were moving quickly and efficiently, either to repair the ancient structure, excavate what still remained buried, or to deliver materials to those who were. In the 7, or was it 8? The smug Lamia couldn't be arsed to recall, months since she and her partners discovered the ancient city of Aramanabad, they had been hard at work repairing it in preparation for this very day. Though it had only been herself and 2 others at first, their numbers had quickly risen, thanks to a little creation she dubbed the Cerberus Program, a particular mind-controlling nanobot, as well as the good old-fashioned recruitment of people with a grudge against humans. And now, all these efforts and more were about to pay off big time. But first, she had to make a quick stop to rub some salt in an open wound.
It would seem your little merc pal wasn't quite what she... It would seem your little merc pal wasn't quite what you claimed her to be,
she called, strutting into the large vault-ceiling chamber and smirking.
But what did I tell you, Rusty? You can't trust those foggies for nothing.
The girl's harsh words were cut off as an immense, shadowy hand gripped her around the abdomen and flung her against the far wall.
Remember your place, Lamia,
growled the hand's owner from the darkest corner of the room,
and be grateful I'm letting you live, despite your insolent tone.
The girl, Mizuho Kirishima by name, peeled herself from the wall and dusted her tail off before glaring at her ally, a mysterious shade known only as Russ.
Yeah, well, thanks, I guess,
she said, expressing no gratitude whatsoever.
But what did I tell you when you But what did I say when you hired the bitch? She'll only bring us trouble. You want a job done right? You gotta do it yourself.
Well then, Mizuzu, why haven't you? The snide comment came from one of the newcomers who had just entered the dimly lit chamber. The first was a man, roughly 1.5 feet tall, a portly fellow with a beard nearly as long as he was tall, named John Smith. Insane, gnomish serial killer from the land down under. He was also the one who invented the Cerberus Program. As for the other, the one who had called Mizuho by that god-awful nickname, was by all outside observations a human. But if one could see just beyond that cheerful-looking persona, they would know that Elizabeth Kosaka was in reality a Dhampir, the offspring of a human mother and a vampire father. Pale skin and red eyes. Like any other vampire, she had hair which was dyed an absolutely offensive shade of highlighter yellow. She also wore a large white cloak which covered her body, but underneath it was practically bondage wear, an outfit made of straps and strategically placed bits of fabric. It was her way of daring the sun, for should the cloak ever come off in daylight, she'd have but seconds to live.
Well, if it isn't little Lizzie Borden,
replied Mizuho sarcastically, giving a mocking curtsy to the self-proclaimed leader of their group.
To what do I owe the pleasure?
Here comes my terrible Australian accent. Shove it, you tot, shouted John. We don't have time for your smart ass right now. God, that's terrible. It was Russ who spoke next, speaking being something he wasn't exactly known for.
Is this about the rumors that have been going around?
He asked.
That it has been found?
They're far from rumors, I assure you, replied Elizabeth over her shoulder. In fact, I've just received word that we have located the Black Knight. It is only a matter of time now.
Is it wise?
A 5th figure spoke up, a young, russet-haired Inari fox girl, and final addition to the circle, named Karin. She clung to the back of Elizabeth's cloak, trembling slightly at the sight of the shade.
I know it's why you were here, but... well, you all know the legends, right?
John gave a hearty laugh and turned to the girl. You got a heart of gold there, Sheila. But at this point, even if we wanted to change our minds about this, we couldn't. It's called being committed. Speaking of being committed, muttered Mizuho under her breath. John glared daggers at her and turned back to Karin. Listen, love, you're a young'un, I'll get that. But you see, the humans have turned this here planet into a one big shitball. What we had to do with a little pest control, you understand? If you're Australian, I'm so sorry for this piss-poor accent. God. Besides,
We aren't going to just up and release that thing without a prior agreement, elaborated the Dhampir. Once we have the Black Knight in our possession, we will present him with an ultimatum. Aid us in culling the humans, or continue existing in that prison. Karine spoke up once more. Some of the circle wondered at times why they kept her around. Sure, she was practically single-handedly funding this operation with the money she'd inherited from her tragically deceased parents. Killed by humans, Elizabeth had told her. In their fox forms, their pelts were worth a fortune. With nowhere to turn, she ended up siding with Elizabeth and her allies, and so they tolerated her presence and treated her as sort of a mascot.
I thought we were looking for Ari something. How do you say it again?
Aramanus, replied Russ. The Angraminyu. To the Christians, he is Lucifer, Satan, the devil. To the ancient Egyptians, he was called Apophis, god of the darkness. He was defeated millennia ago by a warrior whose name was lost to time, and imprisoned in a massive stone we know today as the Black Knight, before being cast to the stars. No one was ever supposed to discover it, but even if they did, the warrior put safeguards in place to guarantee no one would ever be able to release him. 4 seals for 4 keys, each bestowed unto the lords of the elements. Only by bringing them together before the Black Knight and calling upon Aramanus can he be released. However, over the years, the warrior's magic has likely decayed to the point where only the 2 keys we've already acquired will be necessary. At the very least, they will allow us to awaken and contact him, if not free him entirely.
And if not, finished Elizabeth, turning towards the archway and making her way out of the room, it's only a matter of time before we locate the remaining 2. Now then, come, my friends, and remember this moment well, as it will mark the beginning of the end for humanity as we know it. Ever since the day of Emiko's attack, while under the influence of the accursed nanobots, Tsukiyomi Academy had been closed down for campus-wide repairs. While most of the student population was more than thrilled by this turn of events, a certain few weren't as such. Not because they enjoyed the classes, mind you, but because anything, even calculus or trigonometry, or even historical literature, would have been far more preferable to Usako Takibana right now than the strict training regiment Nonami had issued for her. Each morning at 5 a.m. sharp, Usako was already out jogging, rain or shine, until 6:30. Then, from 7 to 9, she would either be practicing basic karate or taekwondo, or receiving kendo lessons from some friend of Ray's who, to Usako at least, looked like a random bum off the street. From there, she was allowed a break from 10 until noon, where she would have to swim the length of nearby Lake Ryuzaki, or about 2 miles, before once again jogging all the way home. Usually this took 6 hours in and of itself, and once home, all the exhausted Pinkette wanted to do was take a cold shower and go straight to bed. One day, however, during kendo practice, she finally reached her breaking point. Each time Usako thought she might finally land a blow on him, her teacher's wooden kendo stick seemed to magically block hers. Today she was once again practicing kendo with Fubaru Kenzaki, and though he looked the part of the beggar, his skill with a blade was comparable to that of a master swordsman.
Damn it! She roared mentally. Who the hell is Kenzaki-sensei? How is some homeless guy so damn good at this?
Drink time.
I can see it in your eyes,
he said, parrying yet another one of her blows.
You think, how does Fubaru do it? How is he so skilled, yet living in the gutter?
The Pinkette said nothing, her eyes focused as she simply continued to strike at him, and finding herself getting angrier and angrier with each successive clack.
I see. So that is how it is to be, then. Very well, forgive me.
In a flash, the scruffy-faced man swept Usako off her feet and pointed the dull edge of his weapon at the Pinkette's heart.
If this were real, you would be dead now, he said, retracting the tool and extending a hand down to the girl. Instead of accepting it, though, the fuming girl instead slapped it away.
I don't need any damn help, she barked. Not from you, not from Issei-san, not from anyone.
She attempted to stand up, but her legs were still wobbly from the fall, and she landed flat on her rear again.
What the hell am I training for? The Olympics? What's the point of all this, huh? I mean, I don't even use a katana, so what the hell good is kendo practice gonna do me?
A loud, disappointed sigh echoed through the gymnasium, causing Usuko to quickly jerk her head around to see who was there. Rei was seated in the bleachers and had been watching the two for some time now.
And what do you want, Kobayashi? Come to watch me fail miserably?
Wordlessly, the crimson-haired girl walked over, took Usuko's kendo stick from her, and turned to face Kanzaki. Immediately, the two began exchanging blows, so quickly at times that Usuko thought they had simply vanished. Once they had finished, Rei walked back over to Usuko and handed her the now nearly snapped stick. While it wasn't exactly the sturdiest thing in the world, Usuko was a little frightened by how badly Rei had mangled it.
Usuko-chan,
she said in an unusually calm manner.
I know this is, a difficult time for you right now. And I understand that this all seems pointless. But I want you to, think for a minute. Why would we have you do all these exercises and practices for no reason?
The pinkette was silent. She had a feeling she knew the answer, but was too embarrassed to admit it.
Your body, Usuko-chan. Your body is that of a human's, and, a young one at that. If you were to go out right now and fight any of the things we do all the time, you'd be killed or eaten or worse. The more you build up your strength, the stronger you'll be when you transform. It'll get easier, I promise. But for now, you need to stick with it, okay?
Usuko nodded softly, tearing up slightly.
I'm sorry, Rei-chan,
she mumbled with a blush.
I didn't mean to yell at you. There,
Rei replied, hugging her friend.
That's right. Just cry into my bosom.
A solid gold Buddha statue fell from the sky and onto Rei's head before she could finish that thought.
Owie!
She cried.
Where did that come from?
Usuko giggled softly.
Sorry, Rei. Nonami gave me a spellbook of sorts, and I've been working on some self-defense magic. Weird, though. That one is only supposed to ward off people with questionable motives. Must need to be recalibrated, I guess,
suggested the embarrassed Oni as she went to find an ice pack. Later that evening, after returning home from her jog, Usuko noticed the door to her apartment wasn't a door at all. It was ajar. Oh, crap, she whispered to herself, preparing a defensive spell as a precaution. Silently, the pinkette inched closer and closer to the doorway, a faint red sphere encasing her hand.
Oi, who's there?
A silky smooth voice, one very familiar to Usuko, called out.
I can hear you, you know. If you're a burglar, I hope you're ready to get hurled out the 12th floor window.
Usuko then smiled and sighed, powering the spell down, causing the sphere to fizzle out.
It's just me,
she answered, opening the door and playfully smacking her teal-haired, green-eyed cousin, who was sprawled out on the couch.
Long time no see, Sakura. Still hate closing doors, I take it? Well, you know.
Her voice trailed off.
Anyway, Usuko, a big package came in the mail for you. It was pretty heavy, so I figured I'd open it up and bring it up piece by piece.
She motioned to the floor in front of her.
Mind telling me what this stuff is? Not gonna lie, it looks like spellcraft materials. When did you get into the occult? Could have sworn you didn't believe in that stuff.
Before Usuko could reply, the apartment complex began shaking as the surrounding areas were hit by a large earthquake.
Duck and cover!
Shouted Sakura. Excuse me. Diving under a nearby table. But Sakura's words went unheard by Usuko, as the girl's eyes went wide and a dark expression crossed her face.
Gardner HQ. Once the ground had finished shaking, Lydia was the first person to speak. "Everyone all right?" she asked, her voice trembling. "More importantly, did anyone else feel that sensation?" Sarugami nodded. "Yeah, it felt like fear, hatred, pure evil, bottled up for eons, finally being released. Or it was the Taco Bell I had for lunch." "Aru!" snapped the very unsettled Lydia, quickly recomposing herself before continuing. "That was not the time to be making jokes. I felt something similar to this before." She scrambled for her cell phone, dialing a number she hadn't called in years, praying she was wrong. "You felt it too, then?" was the first thing the woman on the other end said to Lydia. Her accent was Cockney British, but her tone was quite sophisticated despite that, though both rang deep with an understanding of the situation. "I'll be there in a day. Stay safe until then." "Of course," replied the cat girl, and, "Lydia, please tell me this report's wrong." The other woman's voice had grown quite frantic. "Please tell me that you don't have a possible dweller among your ranks." Yes, most likely. Her name is Uso." "Then it's worse than I thought. Whatever you do, you can't let this girl come into contact with—" The signal cut off. Ma'am?" said Aru. "Usako's outside. And she's floating. Also, her eyes are red. That isn't normal, is it?" "Shit," was all Lydia could say before the explosion. After the earthquake, a strange feeling had come over the Pinkette. A blanket of darkness fell over her. Then suddenly she found herself looking outside of her own body, but from within, and with no control of her actions. As Usako watched in horror, the thing in her body blew a hole in the wall before floating out through it and heading towards Ayanami Industries. What she didn't know was that the tremor that had hit the region had started about 20 miles off the coast, in a place called Aramanabad, where the seal on the Black Knight had begun to falter. However, the damage was enough to allow the consciousness of the sole inhabitant of the stone to escape, and had immediately found its way to Usako for reasons the girl couldn't even conceive of. Once in control of her, it burst through the wall and made its way to the only place where it sensed opposition could be found, Ayanami Industries. As Usako fought to regain control of her body, she was aghast to see herself extend a single hand out and fire a car-sized blast of energy at the building, causing a massive explosion. A fight then ensued between her, Nonami, and Emiko, who had fortunately been there at the time of the attack. "Usako, what is wrong with you?" shouted Emiko in her second form, as she blocked a hail of purple fire arrows. "Why are you attacking your friends?" The girl sneered, replying in a voice, both Usako's and something else, gravelly and monstrous. "And as I told you, Oni, I'm not Usako." Dropped something important, sorry. At the last word, she unleashed black flame from her palms, scorching Emiko and causing her to scream. "Very well, then," called Nonami from up above as she aimed a silver and blue bow at the girl. "If not Usako, then who, pray tell, are you?" She fired, the gleaming arrow grazing Usako's arm as the girl's smile grew wider. "Ah, the arrows of light," she said, sighing almost wistfully. "You really think those old relics will do you any good? You're as foolish as your ancestor and twice as doomed." Usako's left arm became cloaked in shadow for a moment, before disappearing completely from the elbow down, leaving a small black wisp in its place. "But I suppose I can grant a dying girl's last wish. I am a gentleman, after all." The laugh that came from Usako's mouth then was nothing short of horrific. It was like the crunching of 1,000 skulls mixed with a lion's roar, then distorted as though it were underwater. A massive, four-fingered ebon claw seized Nonami, holding her as though she were a doll in a child's hand, and slammed her into the ground before dissipating as Usako's left arm reappeared. When it spoke, the voice that came out was no longer Usako's at all.
I am known by many names, and have worn many titles, but perhaps the one you will most recognize is Aramanes.
No, wheezed Nonami. Impossible, whispered Emiko. It laughed.
I promise you, I am indeed Aramanes the Dark, the Angraminyu, all the evil in the world. I had been sealed away long ago by the thrice-damned warrior, but now...
Another cruel laugh.
Now I am free. Free to rule this place. Free to slaughter the wretched human insects who have polluted this world. Free to do as I please. For could anyone in this age hope to stop me?
You're forgetting one thing, shouted Emiko in defiance.
Usako's one stubborn girl. I doubt even you could hold her back for long.
That's right, agreed Nonami. If you think Usako will just let you have her body without a fight, you're in for a painful surprise.
It would take more than one dweller's will, no matter how strong, to overpower mine,
it snorted in reply.
You fail to realize just what.
Usako's body seized as her eyes began flashing between red and blue.
You dare!
It screamed as Usako's voice slowly replaced the other.
You fools dare to control
Usako, now inexplicably free of Aramana's control, fell to the ground, unconscious, as four multicolored spheres of light emerged from her yokai crystal, making a beeline to where the girls were standing. Her first instinct being to dodge the unknown projectile, Emiko ducked down as the blue sphere passed through the long ebon locks of her Oni persona and disappeared. Nonami, however, allowed the tannish sphere to make contact with her, curious as to what it could be. It spiraled upwards around her body like a tornado in reverse, before zipping into her yokai crystal and vanishing. Then for a moment, the vampire felt like her whole body had turned to stone, and she began mentally smacking herself for her own stupidity in the matter. Then, everything went back to normal. Her body felt as it always did, and after a quick inspection, she determined that everything was intact. What just... It was all she managed to say before her crystal sparked brightly, its light fading, and suddenly she was in her true vampiric state. The only problem was that the clock read 3:35 p.m., and the clouds had begun to disperse. Okay, this next part, there's some German. I don't speak German, so apologies for my terrible pronunciations. Komm schon, shouted the now black-haired Nonami in German, her red eyes wide with terror. Das kann nicht passieren! Thinking fast, she bolted under a large overhang of debris to shade herself from the quickly reappearing sun. Emiko, bist du bei Bewusstsein? Again, not German. Can't barely speak it. Sorry. A deep grumble answered her question. Nanto imashita ka? Asked Emiko, still in her Oni form, not yet realizing she couldn't understand her ally. Koe o agete? Following the sound of Nonami's voice, Emiko reached the small alcove where the vampire had shielded herself. Not wanting to risk being seen, Emiko dragged some more larger pieces of debris over, so as to increase the amount of shading for her and her friend before crawling in and sitting near her. From there, they struck up a conversation, albeit in heavily accented English. Emiko, for her part, was glad to finally have a chance to put what she learned in class to practice. What happened? Nonami asked, warily eyeing a small gap in the covering.
As best I can tell, something shorted out your crystal, whispered Emiko in reply, not wanting to deafen either of them with her regular voice in this small space. I didn't even know that was, what's the word, Kano.
I didn't think it was possible either, Emiko, muttered Nonami, but it would explain why we could not understand each other. The yokai crystal, they work as universal translators, makes communicating easier.
The rubble shifted, and a patch of sunlight opened up, slowly lengthening on a path towards Nonami. Without so much as a moment's hesitation, Emiko threw herself on top of the vampire, so as to shield her from the deadly rays. Daijoubu desu ka? Yelled a panicked Emiko, her face mere inches from Nonami's.
Yeah,
she mumbled, eyes averted and cheeks blushing.
Danke, I mean, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Of course. Though Emiko was unsure if she were interested in women, there was something rather striking about Nonami's true form. She could even feel her pulse rising a bit. In her human form, Nonami was about 5 foot tall and 90 pounds, with pale white skin, medium-length pumpkin orange hair, and bangs trimmed in such a way that they ever so subtly called to mind the image of a bat. Her eyes were a bright, piercing blue that seemed to shimmer even in near darkness. This form, however, was quite the striking contrast. Standing at about 5'11", or just under Emiko's human height, and maybe 125 pounds, though with the same lean physique and skin as white as porcelain. Her hair, now black as night, with just the faintest hint of orange, had grown an extra foot in length down her back, while her bangs, though keeping the same general look, were much more sharply angled. But Emiko noticed the most, though, were her eyes. Now the blood red of a vampire, they quite literally glowed in the dark.
Speaking of safe, how is Usuko?
Asked Nonami, concern creeping into her voice.
I did not have a chance to make certain she was okay. Und ich bin sehr besorgt.
Relax, replied Emiko assuredly. You really think I'd just leave my Shinyo lying in the dirt like that? Lydia showed up and had her airlifted to the hospital. You took a bit of a tumble too, come to think. Maybe once we're out of here, you should get checked out as well.
I appreciate the concern, but...
Nonami replied, her mind flashing back to the paralyzed feeling from after the mysterious light struck her.
Well, I suppose it could not hurt.
Emiko smiled for a moment before sighing. Okay, I'm sorry, but I gotta ask you something really, really embarrassing, she said, one hand reaching up to her forehead. This accent. I've never heard it from you before. Does every vampire go all, Ich bin ein Berliner, when they transform, or are you just special? Even among their royalty, subtlety was not something Oni were known for, and Emiko was clearly no exception. If she feared that Nonami would be insulted by the phrasing of her question, then she would have certainly sighed in relief at the sound of the other girls giggling.
That is probably the most unique phrasing I have ever heard, she sighed. To tell you the truth, I was born in Germany, and I lived there for many years with my grandfather, Marno, and my son, Claude.
Emiko's eyes nearly bugged out of their sockets. You have a son? She shouted, quickly lowering her volume and bowing her head sheepishly. Sorry, I just wasn't expecting that, I suppose.
It's all right, replied Nonami rather calmly. I get that a lot. When you look eternally 19, people get understandably confused that you have a 35-year-old son.
Emiko cleared her throat. Anyway, I suppose I'd like to apologize for what happened a few weeks ago. I know I was being controlled, but even still, I owe you an apology, Issei-san.
Apology accepted, Your Highness, she replied without a hint of sarcasm. If it's any consolation, I'd also like to apologize for stabbing you through the mouth like that. It was a bit excessive in hindsight.
Nah, I had it coming, shrugged Emiko. Besides, I regenerated quick enough that it really didn't matter.
It would be another hour before the girls were found, and by that time they'd become fast friends. Several hours later, the girls had all gathered in Usako's hospital room, and one thing was clear. Nonami wasn't the only one whose yokai crystal was on the fritz. Ray and Sarah both seemed to be stuck in their true forms. Ray, with the bulk, shoulder spikes, and tiger-striped clothing of her Oni form, was hunched over Usako, trying to get a close look at her face. As for Sarah, half invisible, and whose eyes now burned like coals beneath incredibly long bangs, she had taken a seat near the window and was keeping to herself. Ah, good evening, greeted the vampire in barely passable Japanese. I weren't seeing we the only ones affected by whatever is? Ray made a noise like a short snort, the Oni equivalent of a snicker.
Geez, Nanami, she said in flawless English. And I thought Sarah's Japanese was atrocious. You make her sound like a person who speaks it good.
And you clearly need to work on your repertoire of humor, Kobayashi, chided Emiko in a clearly exasperated tone. What exactly happened to all of you?
I can't speak for the others, answered Ray with a shrug. But, I think whatever those lights that came out of Usako were had something to do with it.
In the corner of her eye, Emiko saw Sarah writing something on a pad. Aye, she wrote. A pair of glowing green spheres, one red and one green, passed through our bodies and shut down our crystals. Don't ask me how or why. She flipped the page over and hastily continued. I don't know what happened for Ray, but for me it felt as though I had been blown into a typhoon and thrown out the other side. Nonami gulped slightly. That was, she noted, rather similar to her own sensation of being frozen in stone. Then a thought crossed her mind. Perhaps if the tan and green spheres had made herself and Sarah feel like stone and wind, then could the red sphere have...
Come to think of it, chimed Ray, when the red light hit me, I felt like I was falling into the sun and thought I was gonna die. Hey, Amy, what did you feel?
I, didn't get hit by one, actually, said Emiko quietly. At least, I don't think I did. Nonami was about to reply when Ray began shouting something.
Guys, she's waking up!
Shouted the red Oni, about an inch or two from Usako's nose. Good God, woman, give her some air! Cried Nonami, as she and Emiko attempted to pry the red Oni off the girl. So occupied by this were they, that no one but Sarah noticed the arrival of the young woman with blonde hair. Her eyes relaxed and calm, her face relaxed and calm, though with eyes firm as iron. No one there was expecting the arrival of Madrid Lily Pendragon, and no one there could have ever hoped to, for the Supreme Commander of Gardna was about as unpredictable as anyone could get.
How dare you!
Roared the ebon-armored beast, one of its massive shredder claws pinning the helpless form of Elizabeth Kosaka to the ancient stone wall.
Do you have the faintest inkling of who I am? Harmonis, the Lord of Darkness. I am not one of your brainwashed pawns to be controlled. Do you understand this?
A good flow of blood began trickling down the Dampier's face from where she had been roughly slammed against the wall of her chambers. Earlier, when they'd finished the ritual to awaken him, she'd barely gotten a chance to see Arumanas before he had rushed out after Usako. But now that he was here before her, even in the dim light of her room, she was able to get a much better look at him. He looked like a bipedal, vaguely humanoid dragon, covered from ram-horned head to talon-sporting toe in pitch-black metal armor, which appeared to be fused to him. His arms were of proportionate length to his body. but his four-fingered hands practically doubled that length with their massive claws, one of which was presently squeezing the life out of her. From his back sprouted four skeletal wings that didn't seem conducive to flight, though fly he most certainly could. On his head were four large eyes on either side, each containing within them 5 to 6 smaller eyes, each capable of independent movement. Altogether, standing at full height, Aramanas measured about 15 feet tall and probably weighed close to a ton. And every inch and ounce of that was currently beyond furious at the Dhampir for forcing him back from his near victory at Fumizaki.
You weren't supposed to reveal yourself just yet,
she grunted through clenched teeth.
Least of all, using that girl to do so.
A low rumbling sound filled the air for a moment, which seemed to be the great beast chuckling for some reason.
That girl,
he said in an eerily calmer voice,
is of no concern. Her power is not nearly substantial enough to be a threat, let alone a worthy vessel. There will be others, I am certain.
Now it was Elizabeth's turn to laugh. Oh, really? Is that a fact? She shot back, sneering. Why don't you check, I think you'll be surprised. The hulking entity seemed to consider this for a moment, as about half of his eyes closed in concentration. The other half either focused on Elizabeth or the archway behind him. Apparently, he had a thing about not letting anyone get the drop on him. He then started mumbling something, but the frequency was too low for her to make out. What was that? She asked in a slightly cocky tone. Couldn't quite hear you.
I said it would seem you were right, wench,
he bellowed, all eyes save for the one on the archway now glaring at Elizabeth.
Tell me what happened to them, my chosen people.
First, let me down,
she grunted, half deafened by the beast's voice.
It's a little hard to breathe.
Almost reluctantly, Aramanas removed his massive hand from Elizabeth's body, the blonde girl sliding down the wall into a limp pile on the floor.
Now, tell me,
he commanded, kneeling down and leveling his massive jaw in front of her.
And perhaps I'll consider sparing you this time.
With a nod, Elizabeth recounted the rise of the Overus, their reign of terror against the beasts of sea and sky, the hubris that had caused their own downfall into dwellers, and the final climactic battle between Lugosi and Karloff, which supposedly ended their kind once and for all. We've kept tabs on the Roland family for some time, as we wanted to see if any of them developed abilities. Sadly, it didn't seem any of them would. That said, we lost track of Charles Roland roughly a decade ago, though we presume him to be dead.
Roland?
Inquired the looming entity.
What do any Rolands have to do with this?
Elizabeth smiled faintly. Why, everything, my dear friend. You see, Charles Roland is the son of Francine Roland.
I still fail to see any importance here,
growled Aramanas, his patience rapidly thinning. Fair enough, seeing as Francine Roland was the false name taken by Farah von Orlok after that final battle. Farah, you see, was Lugosi's elder daughter. Now, you ask why the Rolands are important still? Simple. Charles Roland is Usako Takibana's estranged father. It was almost impossible to tell, as Aramana's dragonic face lacked things like lips. But Elizabeth could have sworn she saw a faint smile as he stood back up and extended the claw to assist her in doing the same.
Such delicious irony, should your story prove true.
Even more so, when you consider who that vampire there was. Another low rumble filled the chamber as Aramanus chuckled once more.
Oh, I know full well who she is. A von Orlok. Most likely a second daughter to this Lugosi von Orlok.
How could you...
They all have that same stuck-up, holier-than-thou attitude. I faced others before, so I knew the instant I saw her.
Elizabeth nodded. Her name's Maria, but she goes by Nonami Issei in an attempt to hide her true identity. We have a bit of history together. Let's leave it at that for now. And she is, indeed, Lugosi von Orlok's only other daughter. A sly smile crossed her face as she licked some of the blood off of her lips, which makes her Usako's great aunt. The irony is indeed delicious, Lord Aramanus. I wonder if there's any way we can use this to our advantage. The time will come, I am certain. But for now we must plan our next move. Now that they know you're free, they'll certainly want to gather as many of the celestial weapons as they can. Not that they would do much good.
There's one other thing,
rumbled Aramanus into her musings.
When I was released, so too were the elemental spirits inhabiting the keys. They could prove troublesome, should they ally against us.
We'll burn that bridge when we come to it, Elizabeth assured him. But for now, we must focus on recovering the weapons. Give her some air. The world had gone black some time ago, Usako remembered faintly, and quiet too. Now she was hearing what sounded like snippets of conversation all around her, and the voices speaking sounded very familiar, but Usako found herself being dragged back into the darkness once more. Finally, with great struggling, Usako managed to open her eyes to slits, though all she managed to see was a massive red blur. Am I dead? She pondered to herself as her eyes slowly began to focus on the shape in front of her. Now it was a red and yellow, or was it orange, blur, and vaguely humanoid, too.
Guys!
A gravelly voice called out.
I think she's waking up!
Wait a minute, she thought to herself. That voice. It took her another 5 seconds for it to click. The voice was Rei in her Oni form. But then where was she? Her eyes snapped fully open to behold the form of Rei Kobayashi in full Oni attire, or lack thereof, face about half an inch away, body layered right over hers. Rei! Shouted Usako in both surprise and confusion. What is... She couldn't finish that thought as searing pain ripped through her body. Oh, there go my organs, she thought helplessly. Stay in your homes. Mommy needs you. You might recognize that line. All around her suddenly gathered more familiar yet unfamiliar faces. It took her a minute to recognize the black-haired, red-eyed person Nonami... Wait, what? Oh, as Nonami Issei. It took her a minute to recognize the black-haired, red-eyed person as Nonami Issei. And as for Sarah, she didn't seem much different, though most of her face was concealed beneath long, shimmering silver bangs. Emiko was also there, the only one still in her human form. Another person then walked into the room, a girl who looked about Usako's age, with dark blonde hair and iridescent sapphire blue eyes, who yanked Rei off the pinkette's body without much effort. Usako Tokibana, she said matter-of-factly, tell me, what do you remember of the past 24 hours? What? She groaned, still in slight shock from Rei's sudden appearance. That's about how long you've been unconscious since battle, replied Nonami in oddly broken Japanese. Battle? The vampire nodded, and it took Usako a minute to realize the blinds were not only shut, but a blackout curtain had been pulled down as well. What's happened? So, you haven't any memory of the incident? Inquired the blonde woman. Chill out, said Emiko. She's still not fully healed. Heck, She may not even be fully conscious right now as it is. Best wait on the Q&A session, Marty, alright? You may be of royal standing, Princess Ayoma, she replied calmly, and with careful pronunciation of Emiko's Oni name, but that does not entitle you to call me whatever you please. Until I say otherwise, you are to address me as Ms. Pendragon. Clear? Emiko only grunted rudely in reply, and Usuko made a mental note to ask Emi about her parent royal heritage later. I'm fine, whispered Usuko. Well, I mean, for the shape I'm in. But I really don't know what you're talking about, Miss, Pendragon, she corrected softly. And are you absolutely certain? Anything, even something seemingly insignificant, could help verify what was said. And that being... Without reservation, the woman recounted Usuko's possession and subsequent attack on HQ, the ensuing skirmish with Emiko and Nonami, and the aftermath involving the strange lights. However, she seemed to intentionally leave out the identity of the being supposedly responsible. When she was done, though, Usuko's face was as pale as it had ever been, and tinged with a sickly green. No, she whimpered, her whole body shaking. No way. Why? Nonami offered the ashen girl a wastebasket, which Usuko promptly utilized. I can understand this might be a bit odd for you to process right now, but the fact is that you were possessed by an entity, which then used your powers to significantly damage headquarters. Can you recall anything? A name, perhaps? A face? For a moment, all the light in Usuko's eyes faded away. Then, almost mechanically, her mouth began moving, though the voice that came out wasn't quite hers. This vessel was taken under sway by the entity Aramanes. The control of that entity was so complete that this entity could not repel it. Yet, for reasons this entity does not comprehend, the entity Aramanes was forced out of this vessel by an outside force. Using data from that entity, this entity is presently building safeguards to prevent or, at the least, delay future attempts at repossession. With that, Usuko blinked, and much to everyone's relief, when her eyes reopened, she appeared to be herself again. What the hell was that? She shouted, despite herself. Sarah, who had been quiet the whole time till now, spoke up. 'Twas your crystal speaking for ye. Her voice echoed eerily, as if three spoke at once, followed by a deeper, hollow fourth voice, half a second behind the others, stretching out for several seconds after she had finished speaking. The effect caused the room itself to vibrate. Oh, was all Usuko managed to say. The others managed even less. Wait, my what? She asked a full minute later with a wince. Something in Sarah's voice had caused her whole body to go numb, and she felt sick to her stomach again. Rather than speak again, Sarah nudged Nonami, who answered Usuko's question. Yokai crystals are, in a sense, alive. They form a symbiotic relationship with those who use them, though I've never heard of one taking control of someone like that before. Yours must be exceptionally willful. This may be something else we need to look into. But what does that mean for me? Maybe it's related to her being a dweller, suggested Mordred. I mean, as the last living member of her race, maybe she has some sort of special boon? Plus, you all saw what happened to her when Nanami got stabbed. Just spitballing here. But I'm not! I mean, I don't think I am, at least, because I have a little sister named Kuriko. Are you blood related? Asked Mordred. Emiko coughed. With all due respect, ma'am, pink is a pretty rare hair color in humans, and both girls share it. So I'm fairly certain that, yes, they're blood related. Yeah, but... Usuko muttered softly. Uso-chan? Said Emiko, an eyebrow cocked in concern. What is it? What is it? The pinkette inhaled deeply. Well, see, admittedly, we're only half-sisters. We share a mother, Tatsuya Takibana, but not a father. Right, then let's go talk to her right now, said Mordred with excitement, oblivious to Usako's past. We can get this owl mess cleared right up. If you have a way to do that, Usako bit out, then by all means. After all, she was murdered in cold blood last year. The excitement in the woman's eyes vanished in a millisecond. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea, honestly. It's fine, sighed Usako. If it's possible, could we discuss this some other time? I think I'd like some time to myself. Certainly, replied Mordred. I plan on staying in Fumizaki for a bit anyway. So once you're feeling better, I'd love to speak once more. With a curt bow, the young Brit left the room, signaling for the others to follow. Nonami was the last to leave, but not before she spoke to Usako. Might I ask you a question? She inquired. Sure, sighed Usako with a smile. Feel free. Do you recall the day after we first met? How could I forget? She giggled in reply. You smashed my grandma's table over Ray's head while doing your best Dio impression. Yes, about that. Your grandmother. Was she your fraternal or your maternal? My what? Nonami sighed. Was she your father's mother or your mother's mother? Oh yeah, she was my dad's mom. Why? Do you remember your father's name? I thought you were only going to ask me one question, she teased. Well, not really. But he wasn't Japanese. Actually, I was born in America. Like I said, he ran out a long time ago, so Ram took care of Mom and us till we moved here. If you want to know her name, it was Farah, I think. No, wait, Francine, my mistake. Hey, are you alright? At the mention of the name Farah, Nonami's blood went cold. She had always thought something about Usako had looked familiar, and that was it. It had to be. Usako, do you recall the book I loaned you when we moved in? Yeah, the History of Monsters you called it, right? Yes. Tell me, how did you find it? Well, it was good, I guess. This is out of sheer curiosity, sighed Nonami heavily. But did any of what you read stick in that brain of yours? Not really, mumbled Usako. I kind of lost interest some of the way through. How far, dare I ask? Like, maybe page 5? Dear God, you're worse than Kobayashi-kun. But what does that have to do with anything anyway? I'm confused. Stop beating around the bush, Nonami. What is it you want to tell me? Straightening herself out, Nonami's resolve solidified. The Overists were once vampires and mermen, who despised humans greatly, and so used a great evil power to transform themselves. That power eventually weakened them, and they became known as dwellers. Usako, 2 of my relatives became dwellers. My uncle, Karloff von Orlok, and my sister, Farah von Orlok. Aside from the hair color, you are Farah's spitting image. It took Usako a minute to process this. But if what Nonami was saying were true, then... But how? Maria, just how old are you? I just recently turned 243 this past October, she replied curtly. Holy cow, you're older than America, sighed Usako. But then, you are a vampire, so it's not surprising. You don't believe what I said, do you? About my sister and your grandmother. The girl sighed. Of course she didn't. How could she? It just didn't make sense. How could her gram be one of those dweller things? Then again, whenever Usako had visited her there, had always been an air of something not quite right there. Plus, her powers had to come from somewhere, after all. I don't think you're lying, she replied carefully. But I just find it hard to believe that my dear old Gram was, well, one of us. Yeah. Nonami leaned over and wrapped her arms around Usako, pulling the girl close. I understand. Believe me, I do. When we are young, vampires in my clan are just like normal human children.
We can even go out in the sun like they can. And what's more is that my parents do not tell us. Oh, error. Let me restart this. Is that most parents do not tell their children the truth about themselves until around their 13th birthday, when the transformation begins. But what does patience, Usuko? As I was saying, the transformation from human child to adolescent vampire is much like puberty, only far more stressful. All the more so for myself because of the attitude of that time towards my kind. To be perfectly honest, I actually hated vampires as a child. I had been taught in school that they were Satan's minions, that they sought to bring our world under his dark sway. She chuckled darkly to herself. You could imagine how I felt when I woke up one morning to discover I had grown fangs in the night. At first I thought I had been bitten somehow, and that alone made me scared and angry. But when my father came and told me the truth, I almost went mad with rage. For a time, I ran away, tried to hide my true self. One plus side of the transformation is that, until we take the blood of a human, we can still survive in the sun, though it causes pain. Our aging, too, also continues at a normal rate, until our first taste of blood. But then, the primal urges within me took control and... She swallowed. The memory was still a raw one, even more than 2 centuries later. And I bit my first human. I don't remember anything before I awoke, but when I did, and realized what I'd done, I decided I had no choice anymore but to return home. So, Usuko, you see, I understand what you're going through. In a way, I've been there myself. It isn't easy, but unlike me, you don't have to go it alone. You have me, Ray, Sarah, and of course, Emiko. We're all here for you. It was then that Nonami noticed the fact that, at some point during her story, Usuko had fallen asleep and was snoring rather cutely. Well, at any rate, I'd ought to get going myself. Slipping out the door and into the hall, Nonami Issei, Maria von Orlach, wondered what the future would hold. Certainly, with Aramanas on the loose, if that were indeed true, it wouldn't be quiet for some time. But with her great niece Usuko, she joked to herself, things wouldn't be as hopeless as they could be. No, not at all. And that right there is the end of Book 1 of War of the Yokai. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time reading it. Was there any chatting going on? Because yeah, I could not see the chat at all during this. Oh, so you're really, Pen, yeah, sorry, bud. But you got the VOD, you can check the VOD. This will not be the end of this, of course. There are 3 more books that are fully written, and I'm working on the 5th book right now, so. Winter Snow is going to be a lot longer than Prelude to Chaos. It's in 4 parts, so I take the Tella for a walk. That's sweet. But yeah, I love that I get a chance to share my stories with y'all, and apparently, yeah. But again, like I told Penakagi, you got the VOD, and this will be going up on YouTube. To the people on YouTube, if you made it this far, smash that like button. Just, whatever, anyway. I hope you enjoyed. Tomorrow, unless I'm feeling worse than I am today, we'll be starting the survival playthrough in Minecraft 2. I was supposed to do that today, but again, I think I said at the beginning, I did not have the energy to do that. So yeah, smash that like button, crush that bell, pillage that village, release the Kraken, I don't know. Just if you enjoyed, hit a like. Subscribble. Yes, pen, subscribble. Rico
Hashtag Racomaniac Nation. That's right. But yeah. I hope you enjoyed. Until tomorrow, until the next stream, take care. Stan Usico. Oh, and actually, before I end the stream, I am going. This is for the Twitch people only, because this won't be transferred to the YouTube, unfortunately. But if you've made it this far and you're watching the VOD, I am now posting in chat a link to the Discord server where you can come and read these books ahead of time. You can get completely caught up and all that fun stuff. I know quite a few of my friends are already in there, and quite a few Racomaniacs in there as well. You should join. This link will be good for a week. I think the VOD's up for 2 weeks. So yeah, and like I said, this link won't be available for YouTube, unfortunately. But you can find me on Twitter and ask me for it there if you're interested. So, until next time, take care, have a great one, and bayonara.